All right. Welcome back to part 3 of our summer series. Today, we are talking about teens, screens, and sibling conflict. Do you have a teen that you're like constantly nagging to get out of bed? Or if they don't do something, there's a natural consequence for you? We are going to get into the function of our behavior when it comes to our kids and sometimes how we prevent them from failing or experiencing natural consequences because it has an effect on us. I'm so excited about this topic. I've been working with a lot of teen families, and obviously as a new teen mom, I'm in it with you. So let's get into all things teen.
Hi, I'm Mandy, the family behaviorist, and these are 3 of my favorite little humans.
Hi, I'm on this podcast. Let's do this.
Let's do this. This is the behavior blueprint where we can figure out why kids do what they do.
Is that why parents yell sometimes?
Sometimes, because parenthood is messy, behavior is complex, but with the right blueprint, we can figure it out together.
Yeah!
Okay, so have you found yourself saying to your teen, like, you have to get out of bed. You have to do the garbage. Why didn't you do the garbage? I was working with a family this week who had this exact issue. Their son was supposed to do the garbage and he didn't. And I was actually working with the mom and son. And he was like, well, dad did it. And I said to him, right, dad did it because there's a consequence for us. If we don't take the garbage down, then we have a week's worth of garbage and it stinks. Believe me, this happened to us last week. It is so frustrating when that happens. So when this type of situation happens, we as parents, we have more of a consequence than they do, right? So the function of our behavior is to escape our own consequence, right? So we don't want the garbage to be there. So even though it was Timmy's job and he didn't get up and do it, we're still going to bring the garbage out. Another example is this same teen had to get up to go to practice. And so we're working on him getting up on his own without needing tons of nagging because he gets nagged, but he won't get up without being nagged. Does this sound familiar to you? Well, we were talking about it and the mom was like, right, but if I don't nag him, then he misses his carpool. Then there's a consequence for us, right? And now we have to drive him. And so I said to him, well, what if she didn't wake you up? Like, what would you have done? He's like, I missed practice. So not only is there a consequence for us, but there's no motivation for him either, which is a really tricky place to be. When we get here, we start talking about intrinsic motivation. Where is the intrinsic motivation? And this is highly controversial. A lot of people will say to me, you talk about rewards. What about intrinsic motivation? You're robbing them of intrinsic motivation. And my pushback is always, what do you do when that doesn't exist? Right? This 14-year-old does not care about getting up. He does not care about the garbage. Now, I want you to care about the garbage, but he doesn't. So when intrinsic motivation doesn't exist, we want to add external motivation to build up internal motivation. This is not forever. Right? So we have to think about ways to scaffold support. And this is something we as parents, I think, could do a much better job at. Another example would be like, I have a teen that's going to be a driver. Instead of being like, here's my card, no gas, maybe like, hey, here's my card, use it for gas, I got you. Maybe it is, hey, for 3 months, I'm going to pay for gas while you start your job. And then in September, this is going to be on you. Scaffold your support. So back to the original example of the garbage or the waking up. And again, this was so cool because I had a meeting with this teen and his mom. And I said, what we want to do is add incentive. So how about this? The garbage has to be to the end of the driveway by 7 a.m. Now, listen, logically, would it make sense that he does it the night before? Sure, I do it the night before. I get it. But we have to relinquish control there. We have to decide what our barometer is for what's appropriate. So it might be the garbage has to be done by 7. If the garbage is done by 7, you earn X. Whatever they're earning needs to be isolated. So for this particular kid, I suggested money, right? We get to teens, we're talking money. And the incentive is if I get up and I do it, or I do it the night before, I earn money. If I don't, dad's still going to do it, but now I've lost the opportunity to earn. I wanted to do it this way because it's mutually beneficial for both parties. Yes, the garbage is still getting done. And so in this case, it's the absence of earning. But ideally, if the motivation of the money is enough, that will get him up and getting going. And so twofold. One, there's not a natural consequence for us of the smelly trash, which our teen does not care about. We're the only ones who care about it. And there's also an added incentive. So again, we are scaffolding the support. So same thing with the wake up. right? Mom's like, well, I have to wake him up. If he misses his carpool, then I have to drive him. That's a consequence on me. I understand all of that. Let's add an incentive to getting up in the morning. Let's add an incentive that if you are downstairs by X, you earn. Whatever they're earning, again, it really needs to be isolated. So, now I say this as I fall on my own sword, right? If my kids are working for an ice cream trip, that means I cannot take them to ice cream any other time. The only time they earn ice cream is when they've done their chore or they've done whatever it is that we're working for. So in this case, if we're talking about our teenager earning money for getting up or doing the chores, whatever that looks like, that means when he's like, hey, I'm going to go with my friends, can I have $5? The answer is no, because the only way that it is earned is for completing that chore. The other part of this is the immediacy. So I've talked about this before. I've actually seen a little bit of controversy on this, but some people have a green light app. This particular mom uses Apple Pay. So let's say she got up on a Tuesday, the garbage was at the end of the driveway by 7, and he was eating breakfast by 7:10. Check, check, check. I'm going to Apple Pay him that money immediately, right? So it's in his account. And that's how it exists. When we start to talk about this, though, we also really want to be mindful of where we're starting and what is realistic. So, of course, when I'm talking to any parent, but especially a teen parent, it's like, all right, I want him to brush his teeth. I want him to make his own breakfast. I want him to make his bed. I want him to be downstairs. I want him to pack his bag. And like we start to pile on. And you're like, okay, we need to start small. So I said, right now, the most measurable thing is that he's downstairs by 7:10 a.m. Again, a really cool part about this was actually working with this teen. This kid is so cool. He's making me want to work with parents and teens or kids a little bit more. He's super self-aware, and we're able to challenge some of his philosophies. And I'm also able to see the dynamics between the two of them. So one of the things that I said to him was, okay, what's reasonable? What is the time? What should that look like? And then we also added, again, scaffold that support. So we talked about putting his alarm clock on the other side of the room so that he has to get up. He's like, I heard there's a really cool one that gets up and rolls all around. I was like, let's try getting up first. And so the alarm clock will be on the other side of the room, and mom can go in once. So she can go in and say, good morning, this is your reminder. And then she can go in more than that. But if he's not downstairs, the incentive of the money, in this case, whatever's appropriate in your home, is gone. So again, starting to scaffold what that looks like. Again, we have to make sure that that is reinforcing enough. So sit down and determine where you want to start. And as I said, there might be other chores. The idea here is not that Timmy is rewarded for getting up at 7 the rest of the summer. And I only say 7 because he had lifting or something that day, whatever time's appropriate. The idea is that we are setting up a routine. Now, the other day, Jerry and I were driving to soccer. Jerry was driving and he looks at me and he's like, I don't think I put my contacts in. And he didn't. And you know why? It was a Saturday morning and we went downstairs in our pajamas and we had, coffee with the kids. And that's not our normal routine. Our normal routine is get up, shower, dress, come down, fully ready to go. And so when your routine starts to shift, you lose some of those habits. So I talked to this teen about that. I go, that is what we're trying to establish. We're trying to work on the routine to build a habit of getting up, doing the chore, whatever that might look like. The other part of this is we want to ultimately increase the complexity of the demand. So let's say let's say 6 days straight, he has gotten up, he has done what he's needed to do. Great. So now we're going to say, okay, now I want you to get up and make your bed. Or get up and brush your teeth. And we're going to start to add more onto that. And the idea is, again, to establish that routine and to add external motivation. We don't reward forever, right? My kids go to the bathroom without an M&M. Can you believe it? But we need to talk about how we fade that support and what that looks like. Okay, we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about screen time. We're really going to focus a little bit on teens today. And if we have time at the end, I want to touch on solo parenting or working parents for the summer as well. Okay. This teen in particular is working towards, he really wants Instagram. So he made me an entire slide deck. I loved it. He made me a Google slide about why Instagram and Snapchat were appropriate and all of those sort of things. And so we're working on what does that look like and what is the path to getting there. So this particular teen also plays a lot of video games. And so the night before we'd met, he'd been playing a video game and I'm working on his parents meeting him where he's at. So the video game he plays requires other people and it's a sports game. So there's a full game that he has to participate in. And so when we were on the call, mom was like, yeah, we had told him to come up. The game was nearly over. It was in the third period and he didn't. And so I was like, what happened there? And he was like, oh, I just like got distracted. I go, okay, but you are sitting here making the argument, made a whole slide deck about how you want more access. How can I give you more access if you can't maintain the access you have now? I said, your parents held up their end of the bargain. They let you go on when friends were on. They made sure to let you complete the entire game. And then whether you were distracted or advantageous or whatever, you started another game. So you're making the argument right here that you want more access. How can I do that? So one of the things I'm working with this family on that I think is very appropriate for a lot of families is laying a pathway to access. So in our session, and this is very typical of most teens, a function of their behavior is access to food, access to money, access to freedom, access to items, right? The video game, the phone, the Snapchat, the bike, whatever. And so that became really clear. That's also very common of kids with ADHD as well. So the access is really important to him. And so a lot of times he was talking in our phone call about a variety of things he wanted access to. He wanted a gym membership. He wanted like a certain kind of protein and he wanted a meal plan. And mom's reaction was like, no, like I'm not going to spend all this money for you not to do these things. Especially with teens, it's really important that we outline a way to get access. And this is something I want you guys to keep in mind with your kids in general, regardless of their age. If the answer is no, it's how do we get there? This is one thing I think I've done pretty well. Don't get me wrong, my kids are still spoiled and ask for lots of stuff. But like today, for example, Lola came home with a binder from her teacher for the summer. And I love this teacher. It came with a whole reinforcement system. So the teacher had an orange section of the binder, a green section of the binder, and maybe it was a blue section of the binder. And when you complete a page from each section, you put a star and there's little rewards as you go. And then there's a big one at the end. So today Lola's gotten really into origami paper. And so today she came out and she's like, hey, do you think one of my little stars could be more origami paper? So right there, right? That is the path moving forward. Lola is outlining, if I do these things, can I earn this? That is the same thing we're doing with teens. This is the modern, or this is the teenage example of first then or when then. So instead of just saying no, lay out the path forward. So this kiddo wanted a lot of stuff. He was like, I want a gym membership. Now listen, I get that. Mom's like, we have a gym in the house. We have all this equipment. 1000%, I understand that. But let's lay the path forward. And this is what I said to her. I said, okay, let's make a list of, I think he plays hockey. So 20 minutes of stick skills. He has to do chin-ups, whatever it is. Like, let's lay out those expectations for him. I'm a big fan of shared notes. And let's track when he does it. And you say, when you have done this 6 days consistently, then we can consider it. So here, the ball is in his court. First, then. A couple of things might happen. One, he doesn't do it for 6 days. It negates the argument. He comes back to you. You have your criteria. When you've done it for 6 days, then we can revisit this conversation. We don't need to give it more attention. We don't need to give it more debate. Remember, debates, power struggle are attention maintained. We just need to be super clear and we need to default to the agreement we've made. When you've done this 6 times, then we can talk about next steps. So 1, he might never do it. 2, he might do it and be like, okay, I'm ready for the next step, in which case he's shown that he's consistent. Again, maybe 6 days isn't right. Maybe it's 2 weeks. I don't know, whatever that might look like. Or 3, he does it at home and he's like, actually, this is pretty easy at home. So there's a variety of scenarios that could happen, but let's lay the path forward. I want you to do this in general. Same thing. He was like, we're talking a lot about, and we talk about this in my household so much, is prioritizing protein. We have growing children, growing teens, and it's really important that we fuel our body with things other than chicken nuggets and Nutella. Those are 2 big ones in my home. And so really working on our kids understanding that. So this mom was working on that as well. Like, you really need to come home from 2 hours of hockey and you need to eat some protein. And so while we're on the call, he's like, well, I want this particular protein. And I was like, okay, let's lay the path forward. When you have come home and prioritized protein after practice 2 weeks in a row, then I'm happy to buy you that particular, I think it was like jerky that you want. Make it super specific. We need to give our kids a path forward. So just be super clear about that. That is sort of the whole point of the summer contract, or this whole point of like the chores, is what is the path forward. And the food stuff in general, helping our kids to understand what that looks like, helping them to be independent about, how to cook an egg. One of my kids came home the other day and was like, I have a terrible headache. And I was like, oh, did you drink any water at school? They're like, I went to the water fountain twice. I'm like, okay, so let's start with some water. And I was like, and what'd you have for lunch? Anybody listening know the answer to that? The answer was, I didn't really like lunch today, so I didn't have much. And then he was like, of course, can I cook chicken nuggets? And I was like, let's start off with something else. Like, I'm happy to make you a quesadilla or whatever that looks like. Really helping our kids understand, especially our young athletes, how to fuel their body. Now, along that same line is the consequence on us. So, for example, we have a picky eater in our house, and sometimes it's like, all right, this is what's for dinner. If you don't eat it, fine. But there's a consequence for us, right? You're in a grumpy mood. It's not fun to be around you, whatever that might look like. And so a lot of times we circumvent that. This is something I am incredibly guilty of. So we want to be mindful about how helicopter-y we're being. Listen, you can hear my chopper. I'm a bit helicopter-y, okay? I prefer helicopter to lawnmower. Lawnmower parenting is when you remove every barrier for them. So you're like, I don't know. Anyway, you should look up the visual of it. It's kind of funny. So we need to prioritize, okay, where are we going to focus? And where are we okay letting them fail? I had to work on this is a lot of teens when they're ready for independence. I worked on this with a family of a daughter with ADHD. And she was like, well, if I don't check her grades, and I was like, okay, give them enough rope, right? Let them try. Build in supports. Don't operate in these like, I'm never going to check. And then at the end of the semester, you're failing, or like I'm checking every day and I'm living so far up your butt, you can't breathe. Let's find the middle ground of, you know what? I'm going to give you 2 weeks and I'm going to check it at the end of 2 weeks. And if everything's above a B, I'm not going to say a word. And then you have to revisit this. So let's say you do that, just like this kiddo. Let's say we laid it out and he doesn't meet the criteria. It's not like going back to helicoptering. Maybe it is for a little bit, and then it's going to back off. And what does that look like? This concept applies to kids of all ages. Like if we're working with our 4-year-old or 3-year-old and getting dressed independently, it's not like you're like, oh, you didn't get your pants on, so you go back to dressing them fully. We want to scaffold that support. What step can you take towards independence? Listen, I know I'm going to be like this. I know I am. With my teen right now, they're taking their driver's test next week. I was like, we got to drive. And you have to build that in for them. Now, personal anecdote. I was a hot mess. Like I have executive functioning deficits. Half of you have diagnosed me with ADHD, probably fair. But I got beat over the head metaphorically speaking, of course, in middle school and high school. And my mom was like, dude, you need to write stuff down. I was like, got it up here. Mom did not have it up here. Don't have it up here right now. And it was over and over and over. And our job as parents is to give our kids the skills they need. I will tell you, I survived college-ish, but in grad school, I was like, okay, all these systems everyone's taught me, I actually have to use. And now I have 37 notes, 22 of them are shared notes. I have a shared note with our teen where I write down, he works for a lot of families on our road, and we write down who he worked for and the rate that he was paid, so that he has, a Rolodex of how much things are costing and all of that sort of good stuff. So I said that to the parent as well, have a shared note. So in this case with this teen that I've been talking about most of this episode, his mom admittedly has ADHD herself. And so part of that is like, how do I follow through on these systems? You need to start small. Maybe we're just going to target the morning routine. Maybe we're just going to target eating after practice. Start in small incremental things that you both can sustain. I feel a lot of pressure having put out the episode about our summer contract, because I know that that's on me. I know that that's on me to follow through. I know it's on me to be consistent. And so that is where the work starts. And so there is a part of me that's like, did I bite off more than I could chew with all of these expectations? I hope not. And mostly because you guys are listening, I'm really, really going to commit to it. But let's talk about that. Who's there to hold you accountable? In this case, it is you guys, but also my sister and I share notes about like things that we're working on. And so just keep that in mind. My best friend, her middle one is like such a good negotiator. He's a chief negotiator. And one time we were at the zoo and she was like, we are not going in the gift store. We are not going in the gift store. And he can wear you down. And they went in the gift store and I was like, and she does what I always do. And she rationalized, like, would I only bought something under $5 or whatever? Listen, I am the queen of that mental gymnastics as well. No judgment. But find yourself a village. Like, find someone who can push back on you a little bit and be like, you know what's happening here. I am happy to be that person for you. Sign up for some coaching. We'll hold you accountable. Okay, so for the last few minutes, I also wanted to touch on single parenting or working parents in the summer. I have been a teacher most of my career, so I have always had summers off. So that has been wonderful for me, and I've gotten that time, and that has been so great. But as I've transitioned more into the family behaviorist, that has shifted. And so 2 things I want to touch on: what it is like to be a single parent, what it's like to be a working parent. I guess 3 things. What it's like to be a single working parent. My piece of advice here is normalizing that. So a lot of times if your friends' kids are around more, their moms are around more, and that comparison, what did I say last week? Comparison's the thief of joy. We can get really sucked into what that looks like. So talk to your kids about what that looks like. Lay out the summer. Be like, okay, you have camps this week, but what are fun things that we could do? Build it in. Say, oh, every Wednesday we are going to ride our bikes to get ice cream, or whatever that might look like, so that they're still feeling those joys of summer. Having a village when you're a single parent is magical, and it's hard to come by. And one other thing, if you're anything like me, it's also super hard to ask for. So I am very guilty of, like, I'll figure it out, I'll figure it out, I'll figure it out. And if you have people offering, I understand why you might not take it up. It's the same thing here, but maybe build that in. Hey, mom, can you pick them up every Tuesday? Can you help me with this? Can you maybe take them to the beach on Friday? But lay your summer out. Hey, we're going on vacation this week and we're going to do a staycation this week. And I've taken these 2 Fridays off and we're going to do this. Also, don't put so much pressure on yourself to live up to the Instagram expectations of, like, I'm going to go to the zoo and the beach and here are pictures of our wonderful summer, because that might not be realistic for you. And that's okay. Try to find your village. That mythical village is so real, even if it's just a friend that you talk to. My best friend and I offer to take each other's kids constantly, and neither one of us really take each other up on it. In fact, last year they were supposed to come over and she felt guilty about that, so found a different plan overnight. I started working on her 6 months ago. She has a wedding in July. And I was like, I am taking the kids. And then she was like, and I was like, I told them, I was like, guys, what are we going to do? But I had to stay on her to accept that help. And so that is a hard thing to do, but I am so excited. We are going to have the best weekend ever. Okay. So this is a little bit about teens and also what that looks like for them, how to scaffold support. Remember, the concept of first then works. All of these concepts works through the ages. We just have to figure out what the motivation is, what the reinforcement is. And like with anything else, it can be faded. It's up to us to give our kids the pathway and to give our kids the skills, even if they don't utilize them. And also, it is okay to let them fail. It is okay for there to be natural consequences. They will figure it out. But just to determine where that is and what that looks like for your family. All right. Thank you guys so much for listening. I hope this teen stuff was interesting. Next week's episode is going to be a Q&A. So go on over to my Instagram or check out the newsletter. I'd love to hear your questions about summer, maybe what you're experiencing so far. What are some of the difficulties? We can get into all of that good stuff. And we can get into more teen stuff if you're interested. If you could please rate, review, like, subscribe, all of that really means a lot to my little podcast. So I see your comments on Spotify. I see your reviews on Apple Podcasts, and I really, really appreciate that. So if you could continue to rate, that would be wonderful. I think I maybe need to solicit those rates a little bit more. And the last thing is be sure to check out my website. Remember, there is a free chore chart on there. It's editable. I went and edited my own after a week of living it. I was like, some of these chores don't make sense. There are other ones I want to put in. So I edited my own and printed and laminated it. The summer contract is on there. All of it is editable. I have a wonderful tech girl, Kate, who's like made this all so easy. So please check those out. They're both free on my website. And you can go back to 2 podcast episodes before if you want to listen to the summer contract and give you a good idea of what we are doing. But in the meantime, check out my Instagram, The Family Behaviorist. Check out my website, thefamilybehaviorist.com. Consider joining our club where we talk all things behavior. And until next time, I'll see you next week.
If this podcast has helped you even a little bit, leaving a review is one of the biggest ways that you can help me. It helps other parents find the show, and honestly, it helps me know what's landing for you. You can do it right now while you're listening. I would really appreciate it. For information on topics like this and many more, come back to this podcast, The Behavior Blueprint Weekly, and you can always check out my content on Instagram and TikTok at The Family Behaviorist. Thanks so much.